Hi everyone, welcome to the wild, unforgiving world of the northern forests. Get ready for a tale of mystery and danger. Grab your warmest cloak because things are about to get cold.
Lost in the Northern Wilds. Part 1. The howling wind carried snowflakes like spirits dancing in the dark, and Thomas Leclair knew he was lost. The thick boreal forest of northern Canada in the dead of winter was an unforgiving place, and his fur trading expedition had taken a dire turn. Separated from his companions after a surprise blizzard, he had wandered for days with little more than a hatchet, a flint, and the soaked remnants of his provisions. The cold gnawed at his bones, each breath a struggle as the frigid air filled his lungs, burning like ice. His eyes stung from the constant biting wind, and his skin had grown raw and chapped beneath his thick fur coat. The landscape around him had become a blur of white, the snow swirling around him, obscuring the path ahead, trapping him in a world where time and space seemed irrelevant. He was certain that if he didn't find shelter soon, the wilderness would claim him as its own. It was on the third day after losing his bearings that he spotted something, a gleam of silver far off in the distance. Desperation spurred him on. Every step was a battle, but he refused to succumb to the wilderness. The river's frozen surface stretched before him, its icy expanse reflecting the pale light of the moon above. He stumbled toward it, unsure whether he was seeing reality or a trick of the light, but he pushed forward nonetheless. He didn't know how long he walked beside the frozen river, following its winding path south, but his legs soon gave out from under him. The cold had seeped into his very marrow, and his body, deprived of warmth and sustenance, betrayed him. With a final cry of frustration, he collapsed into the snow, his vision fading to black. When he awoke, it was to the comforting warmth of a roaring fire and the scent of roasted meat. He was no longer in the wilderness. The walls around him were rough-hewn logs, adorned with thick furs and the remnants of recent hunts. A strange and unfamiliar feeling washed over him, one of relief, but also of wariness. Who had found him? And, more importantly, why had they brought him here? A tall woman stood by the fire, her back to him as she stirred a pot of something that smelled savory. She wore a wolfskin cloak that hung from her shoulders like a second skin, her dark hair cascading in waves down her back. Her piercing blue eyes glinted when she turned toward him, studying him with a mixture of curiosity and caution.
"You are lucky,"
she said, her voice thick with a French accent.
"I found you before the wolves did."
Thomas tried to sit up, but his body felt weak, the strain of days and the cold leaving him unsteady.
Who are you?
He rasped, his voice hoarse and unfamiliar to his own ears.
"Marguerite,"
she replied simply, though there was an air of mystery in her words.
"I live here, alone in the wilds."
She offered him a bowl of warm broth, and though his instincts told him to remain cautious, hunger won out. He drank greedily, savoring the warmth that spread through his body. As the days passed, Marguerite cared for him, feeding him and nursing him back to health. She taught him the ways of the wilderness, showing him how to set snares and traps, to track game, to survive when the elements were against him. Despite his wariness, a bond grew between them, an unspoken understanding that came with shared hardship. Yet, there were moments when Thomas couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. At night, when the fire crackled low and the world outside the cabin was swallowed by the storm, he sometimes heard Marguerite whispering to someone in the dark, her words carried away by the wind. There were other strange things too, footprints in the snow that appeared without explanation, fleeting shadows in the distance, and the occasional glint of metal hidden in the snow. He had learned enough of the land to know that these were signs of something more than a simple trapper's life. One evening, as Thomas lay in the warm cabin, his eyes slowly closing in a drowsy haze, he heard the sound of voices outside. Low, guttural murmurs, drifting through the wooden walls. He rose quietly from his bed and approached the door, pressing his ear against the cold wood. Figures moved between the trees outside, their shapes indistinct in the dark. trappers? Or something worse? Before he could wake Marguerite, she was already gone. He saw her silhouette, cloaked in furs, stepping cautiously into the night. The voices outside grew louder, and Thomas caught fragments of the conversation, though he couldn't make sense of them.
He does not know yet.
One voice whispered. Thomas's heart began to race. His breath caught in his chest, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. What were they talking about? What did they mean by he does not know yet? The next morning, Marguerite was back in the cabin as if nothing had happened. She offered him a simple breakfast, her expression as unreadable as always. But Thomas couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was wrong. He couldn't ignore the suspicion that had begun to settle deep within him. That afternoon, he decided to investigate. He told Marguerite he was going out to check the traps, but instead, he ventured deeper into the forest, moving with cautious determination. He needed to understand what was happening here, what Marguerite was involved in. Hours passed as he scouted the area, trying to gather clues without arousing suspicion. Finally, he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold, a hidden cache of supplies, neatly stacked beneath a blanket of snow. British Army provisions. Musket powder. A stack of rifles, well kept and clearly maintained. Marguerite wasn't just a trapper. She wasn't just a solitary woman surviving in the wilds. No, she was part of something much larger. Something dangerous. He knew then that she was likely a spy, a French operative, perhaps, working in the shadows to resist the growing British presence in the region. A chill settled in his bones as he realized how far he had wandered into a world he couldn't understand. That night, he made plans to escape. The wilderness might have been hostile, but he would take his chances with the snow and cold rather than remain a pawn in whatever game Marguerite and her mysterious allies were playing. But as he made ready to leave, Marguerite confronted him. The moonlight gleamed off the cold steel of a dagger in her hand. Her eyes were hard as stone, her lips set in a grim line.
You know too much, Thomas.
She whispered, the blade glinting dangerously in the firelight. He barely had time to react. With a swift movement, he knocked the dagger aside, using the last of his strength to break free from her grasp. The door flew open as he ran into the night, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He ran without looking back, through the biting snow, through the frozen trees, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, he could hear Marguerite's voice calling after him, her footsteps growing fainter with each passing moment. But before the chase could truly begin, a distant gunshot shattered the silence. British troops had arrived. The gunfire echoed in the night, the crack of rifles cutting through the air as soldiers spilled into the clearing. In the chaos, Thomas fled deeper into the wilderness, the storm obscuring his path. He couldn't stop. Not yet. But then, just as the sound of pursuit faded into the wind, something else emerged from the shadows, a figure, cloaked in thick pelts, his face hidden by a dark hood.
You shouldn't have run.
The man said in a voice as cold as the wind itself. Before Thomas could react, a dart whistled through the air and sank deep into his neck. His vision spun as the world blurred and faded to black. Days later, Thomas awoke in a crude shelter deep in the wilderness. His arms were bound to a wooden post, his body aching from the wounds he had sustained. The man in pelts stood over him, watching silently as the fire flickered in the corner of the room. The stranger's face remained hidden beneath the shadows of his hood.
You are part of this now.
The man said after a long moment of silence.
Whether you want to be or not.
Marguerite entered soon after. Her face was a mask of unreadable emotions.
You were not meant to see this. But perhaps fate has other plans.
Thomas's mind raced. He struggled against the ropes binding him, trying to understand what was happening, what he had walked into.
Who are you people? What do you want from me?
The stranger chuckled darkly, his breath heavy in the cold air.
Survival, my friend. And a war that is yet to be decided.
Thomas's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the scope of the conflict that was unfolding around him. A secret war, a battle for control of the northern trade routes. Neither the British nor the French understood the full significance of this fight. But the people of this camp did. They were the ones who truly held the power. Days passed in uneasy captivity as Thomas learned more about the camp's inhabitants, hardened trappers, native warriors, and deserters from both the British and French armies. They spoke of the looming conflict that would shape the fate of the northern wilderness, a war fought in the shadows, far from the eyes of the official armies. One night, a skirmish broke out within the camp. Factions clashed over resources and power, and in the chaos, Thomas saw his opportunity. He broke free from his restraints, stole a horse, and galloped into the night, determined to escape. But his freedom was short-lived. A shot rang out in the distance, and pain exploded in his shoulder. He fell from the horse, his vision swimming, the world around him spinning. As darkness claimed him again, he looked up to see a familiar face.
You still don't understand, do you? There is no escaping this, Thomas. You are part of it now.
She whispered as she knelt beside him. With those words, the night swallowed them both, leaving only the wind and the endless, unforgiving wilderness.